My name is Grace Ndlavu. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in Zimbabwe, and I came to Dubai with hope, not just for a job, but for a future. I worked as a live-in nanny for a wealthy Arab family in a gated community. From the outside, everything looked beautiful. The marble floors, the chandeliers, the designer clothes, but behind those walls I was invisible. I wasn't bitter, I was just focused. I kept my head down, did my work, and sent money home every month to support my mother and my son. Madam, my employer, was a sharp woman, polished, quietly cold. She didn't talk much, but she noticed everything. At first I admired her, but something in that house was off. Her husband, Mr. Fogg, began acting strange around me, lingering too long in the kitchen, asking questions that had nothing to do with the children. I avoided him. I changed my routines. I made sure never to be alone with him. But in a house that big, silence can twist into suspicion. One evening, Madam asked me to bring her tea. When I entered her room, she was sitting still, too still, her eyes locked on mine, like she was trying to read a lie before I could speak. Then she said something that made my hands shake. "Unlock your phone." I blinked, confused. "Why, madam?" I asked gently. Her tone didn't change. "Unlock it." My heart sank. I told her I couldn't. I had private things, messages from home, pictures of my son. She saw that as guilt. Within an hour, I was told to pack my things. They accused me of sleeping with her husband. Me, a woman just trying to survive. No proof, no question, just judgment. They called the police, saying I had stolen from them too, just to make the charges stick. I didn't even cry when they took me. I just kept repeating one thing in my mind: God knows the truth. God knows the truth. Jail in a foreign country is not just confinement, it's humiliation. The guards saw my skin first, not my name. They didn't ask questions, they assumed the worst. I was treated like I was guilty before the door even closed behind me. Days blurred, my spirit dimmed, but something inside me refused to die. I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I waited, I watched, and I planned. Because even in the dark, I knew this wasn't the end of my story, and it would not be her victory. In those first days in jail, silence became my only friend. The walls were stained with the despair of women who had no voice, no lawyer, no one waiting for them outside. I was one of them, but I also wasn't, because even though I was locked away, I carried something they didn't see: memory. And memory is a kind of power when you're patient. I remembered every detail of that house, every lie that passed as kindness, every smile that was really a warning, and I remembered the moment it all broke. The moment she looked at me, not as a human but as a problem to be erased. What hurt the most wasn't the arrest, it wasn't the cold floor, or the stale food, or the shame. It was knowing that I had given my all to a family who never saw me as more than an object. I had bathed her children, cooked their meals, cleaned up the messes they left without thanks. And still, in the end, I was just another story she could rewrite to protect her pride. She didn't need proof, she just needed someone to blame. But I started to think back, really think. There were signs, times she stared too long, when I laughed, moments she walked in on small interactions and said nothing, but watched too closely. There was an unease in her eyes, the way a woman looks when she's already decided to destroy you, but hasn't figured out how yet. And I, in my hope and my innocence, ignored it. I thought loyalty would protect me. I was wrong. That betrayal cracked something inside me, but it also lit a fire. I didn't want revenge like in the movies. I didn't want to hurt her or scream her name in rage. What I wanted was truth. I wanted a life where no one could rewrite my story, and in that cell, I began to imagine it. A future where I stood not as a victim, but as a woman who had survived her fall. But first I had to get out. One morning, without warning, the guards called my name. I thought it was another lie, another trick, but they told me the charges had been withdrawn, that Madam had suddenly forgiven me. I was released into the agency's custody, with no apology, no explanation. Just like that, my name was clean again, but nothing about me felt clean. I was bruised inside and out, and still I didn't cry. At the agency, they gave me a room, said they'd find me another family, another chance. I sat on that cot and stared at the wall for hours. I told myself, this time I'll be smarter, I'll protect myself. But deep down I had a feeling, she wasn't done, and I was right. They say when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time, but some betrayals are so deep, so twisted in their execution that your heart struggles to accept what your eyes have already seen. I sat in that agency's holding room with a paper cup of tea in my hands, watching women come and go, smiling nervously, hoping their next placement would be safe. I envied their hope. Mine had already been stripped bare. Still I waited, I watched, I listened. A few days passed, then one of the staff members came in with her phone in hand. "Good news," she said. "A new family has requested you by name." That rarely happens. My stomach sank. No one in the city even knew my name, unless someone made sure they did. I didn't ask for details. I simply smiled, nodded and asked when I was leaving. She said, "Tomorrow morning." I knew, in my bones I knew. It was her. That night I didn't sleep, I didn't pack, I wrote instead. Every memory, every event, every date, I wrote it all in a small notebook I kept in my purse. The arrest, the refusal to unlock my phone, the mistreatment, even the moment I was forgiven. I added names, faces, the agency, the guards. I was building something, not out of rage, but out of proof. Because people like her, they don't expect you to remember. They count on your silence. But I had learned the most powerful weapon I could hold wasn't anger, it was the truth, documented, detailed, undeniable. When I arrived at the new location, it was different. A strange address, a villa on the edge of the desert, far from the city lights. I stepped out of the car and the moment I saw her at the gate, hidden behind a black hijab, pretending to be someone else, I didn't flinch. She thought I wouldn't recognize her. But trauma carves memory into your bones. I knew her eyes, I knew her cruelty. I simply nodded and said, "Thank you for the opportunity." Inside there were no children, no family photos, just 3 locked doors and silence that felt too heavy. I didn't unpack, I didn't sleep, instead I waited. I needed one thing, an opportunity to send a message out, a sign to the world that I was here. And so I began to look, cameras, neighbors, any way to trace my location. She thought I was afraid, but fear had already passed. Now I was collecting her mistake. In her arrogance, she had underestimated what survival does to a person. She thought forgiveness meant I was weak, that setting me free was a gesture of power. But what she didn't know, what most abusers never know, is that when a woman survives a cage once, she never walks blind into another. The house was eerily quiet, as if it were holding its breath. No voices, no family laughter, just footsteps that echoed too loudly and shadows that didn't feel like they belonged. I was given a room at the far end of the hall. No lock, no key, no explanation. Every morning, a different man entered the villa. Businessmen, drivers, sometimes men who barely spoke. They never looked at me, but I knew enough to understand what this place was supposed to be. But she never let them touch me, not once. Instead she watched me, studied me, like she was waiting for me to break. But I didn't. I cleaned, I cooked, I kept my head down and my eyes open, and slowly, I began to see her unravel. Her plans weren't working. I wasn't pleading, I wasn't terrified, I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of suffering. That confused her. She started to get sloppy. Her phone would ring late into the night, her voice shaking behind closed doors, and one day, I overheard something that changed everything. She was arguing with someone about a payment. "No, I don't care. She's not giving me anything, she's just there like a statue." I thought she'd cry, beg, I want her gone. That was all I needed. I wrote it down in my notebook the moment she left. I included the time, the words, even the way her voice cracked. She was losing control, and that's when I knew I had leverage. I found the courage to ask to go to the market. It was a test. If she said no, she'd be exposed. The agency required some freedom of movement. She hesitated, then agreed on one condition. Her driver would come, perfect, a new player. And when he picked me up, I didn't waste time. I waited until he slowed near a small street and I said just one thing, "Please." I was arrested without cause. "I need help. If you don't believe me, read this." I slipped him a folded page torn from my notebook. My story, written in calm, factual words. He didn't reply, but he took it. The next morning, she didn't come out of her room. The morning after that, neither did the driver. 2 days passed. Silence grew thicker. And then the knock came. 3 firm hits at the door. Police. Real ones this time. With documents, with names, with a translator. She tried to deny it, but it was all in writing. Her voice rose. Her face cracked. She pointed at me. "She's lying. She's a liar." But it was too late. The system that once ignored me, now had something it couldn't ignore. Proof. They took me aside gently, offered me water. One officer looked at me with something I hadn't seen in weeks. Humanity. We're going to take you back to the agency, he said. You're safe now. I nodded, but inside I wasn't thinking about safety. I was thinking about truth, and how I had turned her silence into my shield. When they drove me back to the agency, I sat in the back seat with my hands folded, calm. There was no need to cry, no need to celebrate. The world around me was still cold, still indifferent, but something inside me had shifted. For once I wasn't running. I wasn't explaining myself. I wasn't being silenced. I was simply returning with my dignity intact, and the woman who tried to erase me was finally being seen for what she truly was. The agency was quiet when I arrived. One of the staff members gave me a clean set of clothes and a new room. They asked questions this time, real ones. They wanted to know if I needed medical help, if I wanted to go home, but I wasn't ready to leave yet. Not before I made sure this wouldn't happen again, to me or to any other woman whose only mistake was trusting too much. Word travels fast in places like that. Within days I heard the whispers. She had been blacklisted. The agency would no longer send staff to her home. Her name was being reviewed by legal authorities, and the driver, the one I gave my letter to, was the one who had sent it to an advocacy group that supports migrant women. He stayed silent until it mattered most. That kind of silence is rare and powerful. She never reached out, never apologized. I don't think she even understood what she had done. People like her don't feel guilt, they feel exposed, and that's exactly what I had done. Without shouting, without threats, without revenge in the way she imagined, I had made her visible, not with rage, but with truth, and truth is heavier than any scream. The agency offered to send me home on a flight the following week. I accepted. I had nothing left to prove here. My name was clean again, but more importantly, my story belonged to me. I spent my last few days in the agency quietly helping new arrivals. I told them what to watch for. I taught them how to keep a journal. I gave them courage, not by warning them of monsters, but by reminding them of their own power. On my last night in Dubai, I stood by the small window in my room and whispered a prayer, not for her, for me, for every woman who thought she had no way out, for every soul who had to stay silent until the moment they could speak without trembling. I didn't need to confront her. I didn't need revenge. The silence I left her with was louder than anything I could have said. When I stepped off the plane back home in Harar, the sun felt different, warmer, more forgiving. The air carried the scent of jacaranda blossoms, and even though I had returned with less than I'd hoped for, I came back with something more precious than money myself. I had faced something most wouldn't believe if I told them, but I didn't need anyone's sympathy. I had already walked through the fire. Now I just wanted to rebuild quietly, wisely on my own terms. My mother met me at the airport. She didn't ask questions, she just held me, and in that moment, I felt the ache of every night I cried on a strange floor, every time I swallowed fear like it was bread, but I also felt pride, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that hums deep in your chest when you've survived something designed to break you. I had been broken, but not finished. I spent the next few months healing. I started teaching basic literacy classes to women in my neighborhood. Most of them were young, curious, and dangerously naive about what working abroad might be like. I didn't tell them my whole story. I didn't need to, but I told them enough. Write everything down, I said. Don't let anyone rewrite your life. Don't hand over your truth. They listened. I saw it in their eyes. I was planting seeds where once I had nothing but silence. One day, I received a letter from a women's rights group based in the UAE. They'd read the anonymous report, my notebook pages, the driver's account, the agency's statement. They wanted to publish the case as part of a training initiative to protect domestic workers. My name would be removed, but the truth would live on. I gave them my blessing, not for fame, not for revenge, but because stories like mine only matter if they don't stay buried. Sometimes I wonder where she is now. If she still walks around believing she won, if she still hides behind wealth and silk scarves, and a smile that only covers cruelty, but I don't linger on those thoughts, because I didn't just escape her, I outgrew her. She will always live in shadows, but me, I found the light again. This story isn't a scream of revenge, it's a whisper of justice, a woman's quiet reclaiming of power in a world that tried to mute her, and that to me is the most satisfying victory of all. Dylan, if this story touched you, Drop a comment below, saying, "My truth cannot be stolen." Let Grace's voice inspire others to protect their power, even in silence.